Hey there. Welcome back to Scary Times. The clock just struck midnight, and there's something unsettling about tonight's atmosphere. I've got some terrifying tales that'll make you question every shadow in your room. If you enjoy getting scared, with us, hit that subscribe button and join our haunted family. Now turn off your lights, put on your headphones, and let Scary Times guide you through tonight's collection of spine-chilling stories. 3 years ago in summer, I worked as a food delivery driver in Taiwan. The city streets became my daily route. I navigated through bustling avenues and quiet alleys. I had just started this new job. The pay wasn't great, but sufficient for a recent graduate like me. However, that year's ghost month would change my life forever. Ghost month, the 7th lunar month in our calendar. It's when we believe the gates between worlds open. Spirits return to wander freely among the living. For most people, it's a time of caution and rituals. For me, it was the beginning of a nightmare. Since childhood, I knew I was different. I could see things others couldn't. Shadowy figures lingered in corners. Some looked human. Others took forms that defied description. I thought everyone could see them too. One day, I pointed to an old banyan tree outside our house. "Mom, there's a man there staring at us," I said innocently. My mother's reaction was immediate. Her face drained of color. She pulled me inside with unusual force. "Never speak of such things," she hissed, fear evident in her voice. "There is nothing there." From that day forward, I learned to keep quiet. I pretended not to notice the spirits around me. But my silence didn't deter them. The spirits realized I could see them. They began testing me. They would approach suddenly, faces inches from mine. They studied my reactions. Any sign of recognition, a startled glance, a quickened breath, would encourage them. They would follow me home, linger in my dreams. I remember seeing a ghost in the local park. It sat perched on a tree branch. Its body twisted at impossible angles as it watched people walk by. The sound of its neck cracking as it turned to follow passers-by still haunts me. Another time, a shadow hung from a streetlight. Its limbs stretched beyond human proportion. It swayed slightly, though there was no wind that night. Many spirits simply wandered the streets. Their footsteps made no sound. Only the occasional rustling of leaves marked their passage. I developed the habit of looking away. I quickened my pace whenever I sensed their presence. Ghost month always proved most challenging. During this time, the boundary between worlds thins. The small park near my apartment transformed. Tables appeared laden with offerings: roasted chicken, steaming rice, bottles of beer, and cigarettes. Incense smoke created an eerie atmosphere. Its sweet yet heavy scent mixed with the summer night air. Spirits gathered around these offerings. They consumed the essence of the food with intensity. Sometimes they fought over particularly appealing items. Their shrieks only I could hear, like distant chalk scraping on blackboard. I typically avoided that park. I created detours in my daily routine. But as a delivery driver, sometimes my assigned routes left no choice. That particular year, Ghost month coincided with my first month on the job. The 15th day of Ghost month marks the height of spiritual activity. The full moon illuminates the night. Spirits are at their most powerful. At 10 o'clock that evening, my delivery app chimed with a new order. The destination appeared on my screen, an address directly adjacent to the park. Despite the unease settling in my stomach, I accepted the job. Riding past the park required all my concentration. I kept my gaze on the road, but I could feel them watching. Cold, hollow eyes from all directions. The gathering of spirits around the offering tables. Some crouched low. Others stood motionless. A few crawled across the ground. The summer air suddenly felt like winter around the park. The chill penetrated my jacket, my skin, my bones. I accelerated past this scene. I focused on completing the delivery quickly. Upon reaching the destination, I knocked on the door. It opened almost immediately. A woman stood in the doorway. She wore a white dress that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. Her skin was unnaturally, her eyes vacant. When she thanked me for the delivery, her voice echoed as though coming from somewhere far away. "Thank you for your trouble," she said, her words hanging in the air unnaturally. As she took the food package, her fingers brushed against mine. The contact sent a shock through my system. Her skin held the temperature of ice. No warmth, no life. Looked up instinctively. That's when I noticed it. A distinct purple bruise circled her neck. It looked fresh and vivid, as though she had been strangled recently. Before I could speak, the door closed with a heavy thud. The sound echoed through the silent night. Standing alone on the doorstep, cold spread upward from my feet. My phone pinged, delivery complete. But something felt deeply wrong. The journey home became an exercise in growing fear. Empty streets stretched before me. Yellow streetlights cast long shadows. Every few seconds I heard something behind me. Footsteps, like someone walking through. Fallen leaves, but not quite right. Too light, too rhythmic. "Who's there?" I called out, spinning around. Nothing visible. But in that precise moment of turning, a shadow detached itself from a nearby streetlight. It hurtled toward me with impossible speed. A distorted face, disproportionately large eyes, a mouth stretched wide in a silent scream. Terror propelled me forward. I ran at full speed. The entity kept pace behind me, moving faster than any human could. The sound of its movement like fabric tearing in the wind. I reached my apartment building, fumbled with the keys, closed and locked the door just in time. My heart pounded against my ribs like it might break through. Sleep brought no relief. In my dreams, I stood surrounded by spirits in the park. They encircled me completely, reached out with translucent hands. Their whispers filled my ears. "Help us. Help us." Most faces appeared blurred, but the woman in white remained clear, the bruise on her neck prominently displayed. I woke at 3 in the morning, the ghost hour when spiritual energy peaks. Sweat soaked my sheets. Through my window, tree shadows moved in the gentle breeze. They resembled hands beckoning me outside. The soft tapping against my window wasn't branches. It was too deliberate, too persistent. The days that followed became a waking nightmare. Passing the park became torture. I felt countless eyes tracking my movements. The spirits knew I could see them. They escalated their attempts to reach me. Reflections in mirrors revealed them standing behind me. They disappeared when I turned. Whispers filled my ears during quiet moments. Words in languages I couldn't understand. Sometimes objects in my apartment moved slightly when I wasn't looking. The temperature would drop suddenly in certain corners of my home. Desperate for help, I visited a small shrine dedicated to the local protective deity, what we call an earth god temple. These shrines stand at neighborhood crossroads throughout Taiwan. They offer spiritual protection to the community. A Taoist priest specializing in spiritual matters listened to my story. His weathered face grew serious as I spoke. The wrinkles around his eyes deepened with concern. "You were born with the sight," he said finally, his voice low and grave. "It's your destiny. But these spirits haunt you because you've broken their taboo." "What taboo?" I asked, dread filling my stomach. He pointed to my arm, the exact spot where the woman had touched me during the delivery. A dark mark resembled an ancient symbol beneath my skin. Not a bruise or tattoo. Something deeper. "This is a spirit's mark," he explained, the smell of sandalwood incense filling the small shrine. "A binding. They've chosen you as their messenger. Only by helping them fulfill their final wishes can you break free." Finding no alternative, I returned to the park after nightfall. As darkness descended, spirits gathered around the offering tables. the sound of spiritual feeding like wind through empty halls. Upon noticing my approach, they turned toward me collectively. The air grew still. Even insects fell silent. The woman in white appeared beneath an ancient tree. Moonlight filtered through leaves, creating shifting patterns across her form. When she spoke, her voice carried both sorrow and hope. "My child," she said. "I need to find my child. We were separated before my death. I cannot rest until I know he's safe." She explained that her son remained alive but unaware of her passing. Her deepest desire was for him to know she still watched over him. "He thinks I abandoned him," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I would never leave him willingly." Following her guidance over several days, I located her son. He lived with adoptive parents in another district. Using a pretext of misdelivered mail, I spoke briefly with the family. I confirmed the boy's circumstances. As instructed by the spirit, I left her cherished necklace in their mailbox. With it, a note expressing continued love and protection. That evening, upon returning to the park, the woman in white awaited. Her appearance had changed. The sorrow had lifted from her face. The bruise on her neck had faded. "Thank you," she said, her voice now clear and peaceful. "Now I can rest." A gentle breeze stirred the leaves above. Her figure gradually dissipated. The last I saw was her smile, genuine and free. This resolution marked only the beginning. Other spirits within the park carried their own unfinished business. Each had unique stories and regrets requiring resolution. Strange phenomena began manifesting in my daily life. Each midnight brought whispers outside my window. They called my name with increasing urgency, the sound like dry leaves scraping against glass. One night I approached the window. Among the shadows of park trees stood a figure, completely motionless, staring directly at my room. Our gazes locked momentarily. Then it raised one hand in a beckoning gesture. It vanished into darkness with a sound like a last exhale. My home no longer felt safe. When alone, I heard sounds from the kitchen, the subtle movement of utensils, cabinets opening slightly, the soft clink of glasses touching. The bathroom mirror revealed handprints when steam gathered on the glass, handprints too small to be an adult's. A particularly disturbing incident occurred when I received a delivery order. It directed me to an isolated house at the city's edge. The structure resembled Japanese colonial architecture from Taiwan's past. It stood surrounded by overgrown vegetation. Windows covered in layers of dust blocked any view inside. Upon arrival, unnatural silence pervaded the area. Only the wind made sound, a low, mournful whistle through broken windows. My knocks received no response. Just as I prepared to leave, the door opened by itself. It released a putrid odor, years without ventilation. Something else too. Something deeply wrong. Suppressing mounting fear, I entered the darkened building. A faint light came from upstairs. It guided my ascent up creaking stairs. Each step protested with an ominous groan. Without warning, my phone rang. The screen displayed my own number as the caller. I answered in confusion. Labored breathing came through the line, raspy and weighted, like someone struggling for air. Despite attempts to end the call, the device remained fixed against my ear, as though held there by unseen forces. A threatening whisper emerged from the speaker. "You cannot escape. We need you. Help us." Breaking free from whatever held the phone, I fled the building. The door slammed behind me with unexpected force. The sound echoed through the night like a gunshot. Looking back, I saw a silhouette, watching from an upstairs window. Completely motionless, just watching. Following this encounter, disruptions intensified. The spiritual presence extended beyond shadows. While working at my computer, strange text appeared on screen. No one touched the keyboard. Personal belongings relocated mysteriously. Keys placed on a table might appear inside the refrigerator. Later, the television turned on by itself at exactly 3:33 each morning. During lunch break, a coworker mentioned seeing what she thought was me near my desk, but when she approached, the figure vanished. "Have you offended someone recently?" she asked, half joking. "It feels like someone's watching you." If only she knew how right she was. I gradually realized avoidance would no longer work. These spirits had sought me out with purpose. Understanding that purpose represented my only path to freedom. Perhaps my ability to see them existed not as a curse, but as a responsibility. Not to fear their presence, but to help these restless souls find peace. As Ghost Month continued, I understood that my journey had only just begun. Many more stories waited to unfold in the shadows between worlds. The mark on my arm pulsed slightly. In the darkness, a reminder of my new purpose. In Taiwan, we believe that those who can see spirits carry both a burden and a gift. I was beginning to understand which was which. It happened 3 years ago. I remember it clearly because that summer was exceptionally hot, and Taipei's nights were even more stifling than its days. I'm a taxi driver, operating an old yellow Toyota. Every day, I start my shift at 5 p.m. and finish around 3 a.m. There's nothing extraordinary about my job, and the income isn't great. But for a 40-year-old man like me, being able to work at my own pace is satisfaction enough. I prefer the night shift because Taipei is quieter after dark, free from the daytime crowds and noise. Only streetlights and distant traffic keep me company. However, the night city has its hidden side. Since childhood, I've had what some call the gift of seeing spirits, or supernatural sight, the ability to see things others can't. As a child, it frightened me. Now I've learned to pretend I don't see them. During the Ghost Month, a traditional festival when spirits are believed to return to our world, this ability becomes particularly strong. That year, something happened that still makes me break into cold sweat whenever I think about it in the dead of night. It was the 15th night of the Ghost Month, the peak of this festival when the gates between our world and the spirit realm are said to be wide open. I was driving around Taipei's Datong district, near Yanping North Road, looking for a place to grab a late-night meal. Around 1:30 a.m., my radio crackled. Passenger waiting on Yanping North Road, Section 3. I checked my map. It wasn't far. As I pulled over, I saw a young woman standing under a streetlight. She wore a white dress, her long hair falling over her shoulders, and her expression seemed vacant. She waved at me immediately. "Where to, miss?" I asked through the window. "Bataan and Zindian, please," she said softly. Bataan at this hour? This scenic riverside area, famous for its suspension bridge, was usually deserted at night, except for couples and old men fishing. But as a taxi driver, it's not my place to question. I nodded. "Please get in." She sat in the back seat. Her movements, so light I barely heard them. Through the rearview mirror, I could see her clutching her handbag tightly, her face unnaturally pale. As we drove towards Zindian, a light rain began to fall. I kept glancing at the young woman through the rearview mirror. She remained silent the entire time, her breathing barely audible. As we passed through Gongguan, a bustling university district, I suddenly noticed a strange smell, like damp soil mixed with decaying flowers. I coughed slightly and asked, "Would you like me to roll down the window for some fresh air?" She didn't answer, just clutched her handbag tighter. I started feeling uneasy, remembering my grandmother's warning. Don't pick up lone passengers during Ghost Month, especially young women at night. I tried to reassure myself not to overthink. The rain grew heavier, blurring the streetlights, and the atmosphere in the car became increasingly eerie. As we drove past the Taipei Zoo area, I noticed something strange. The raindrops on the windshield, when caught in the streetlight, appeared to have a faint reddish tint. I blinked, looked again, and they seemed normal once more. I must be tired, I told myself. My eyes are playing tricks. But my hands began to tremble slightly and cold sweat formed on my palms. The temperature inside the car seemed to drop, and even after I turned off the air conditioning, the chill remained. The woman in the back seat remained silent, but I noticed her breathing had become rapid, as if she was suppressing some emotion. "Rio, you all right, miss?" I asked. She responded with a faint, her voice barely audible. As we crossed a small bridge, the car suddenly stalled. I tried to restart it, but the engine made a harsh sound and refused to turn over. "That's strange," I muttered. "The car was just serviced yesterday." I turned to apologize to my passenger. "I'm sorry, there seems to be a problem with the car. Let me see if I can fix it." She nodded, her face showing a trace of anxiety. I got out to check under the hood, and the rain immediately soaked my clothes. After examining everything and finding no obvious issues, I was about to close the hood when lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the night. In that brief moment of brightness, I saw a shadowy figure crouching on the roof of my taxi. It looked like a small child. I stumbled backward, nearly falling. When I looked again, there was nothing on the roof. I must be exhausted, I reassured myself again, forcing myself to return to the car. Strangely, when I got back to the driver's seat, the engine started by itself, running as smoothly as if there had never been a problem. I glanced at the rearview mirror. The young woman was still looking down, but I thought I saw her lips curl into a faint, eerie smile. We finally arrived at Bataan, and I parked in the small lot near the suspension bridge. The rain had stopped, and it was so quiet that only the distant croaking of frogs could be heard. The woman spoke. "Driver, could you accompany me to the riverside for a moment?" I hesitated. "It's very late. Will you be all right by yourself?" She said quietly, "I need to find something. Could you please come with me?" I wanted to refuse, but seeing her vulnerable appearance, I got out and accompanied her to the riverside. Under the night sky, the Bataan suspension bridge looked like a giant snake stretching across the water. Moonlight reflected on the surface, casting an eerie silver glow. The woman walked to the riverbank, stopped, and suddenly crouched down, searching among the rocks. I stood nearby, watching her silhouette, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. Suddenly, she turned around with a strange smile. "I found it." In her hand was a red string with a small cloth doll attached to it. The doll looked very old, with obvious signs of water damage. Its colors faded. The face was drawn simply, 2 black dots for eyes and a curved line for a mouth. But strangely, in the moonlight, that simple face seemed lifelike, as if smiling at me. The woman gently caressed the doll, her eyes showing an indescribable tenderness. Her movements were as gentle as if she were cradling a real baby. "This is our baby," she suddenly said, her voice choked with emotion. "We had planned to have a picnic here together after he was born." I felt a shock run through me, unsure how to respond. The night breeze swept across the river, bringing a chill that made me shiver. Just then, I noticed a dark figure appearing on the water's surface. At first, I thought it was a reflection, but looking closer, the shadow seemed to be a person standing on the water, slowly approaching us. I rubbed my eyes, unable to believe what I was seeing. The shadow became clearer. The silhouette of a young man wearing dark clothing. "He's here," the woman whispered, her eyes fixed on the river, her face showing anticipation. My heart raced. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like lead, unable to move. The shadow stopped about 2 meters from the shore, extending its hand as if waiting for something. The woman stood up, took a few steps forward, her toes already touching the water. She looked back at me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for bringing me here. We promised to meet here today." "What is this?" I couldn't help asking. She gently stroked the doll, her expression turning sad. "This is the promise between him and me. Before, I could ask more. She suddenly threw the doll into the river and whispered, "Thank you, driver." As I was about to speak, a cold wind blew past and the woman's figure gradually became transparent in the moonlight. I rubbed my eyes in horror, but she had vanished, leaving only wet footprints on the ground. Terrified, I ran back to my taxi, finding the backseat soaked with a faint floral scent lingering in the air. My hands shook so badly I could barely insert the key. When I finally started the car, I immediately stepped on the gas, desperate to leave. But as the car turned, I saw something bone-chilling in the rearview mirror. On the water's surface, the shadowy man was holding the cloth doll, standing on the water, and the woman I had just driven was standing beside him, their hands joined. Silently watching my departing car, I floored the accelerator, speeding away from Bataan, my heart pounding violently in my chest. On the way back, I kept checking the rearview mirror, terrified I might see the woman's figure in the back seat. The car radio suddenly turned on by itself, playing an old song I'd never heard before, with lyrics about lovers meeting by the water. I immediately turned it off, but within 10 seconds it came back on by itself. Cold sweat covered my palms as my mind replayed everything I had witnessed at Bataan. Who was that woman? Who was the shadow standing on the water? What was their connection to the cloth doll? As I was lost in these thoughts, the car approached a traffic light intersection. Suddenly, a white-clad figure flashed across the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching as the car skidded on the wet surface before coming to a stop. I gasped for breath, looking around, but the road was empty. I must be exhausted, I told myself again, deciding to go straight home and not pick up any more passengers. I sped back to the city center, my mind in chaos. Everything that had just happened, was it real or imaginary? When I got home, I discovered a yellowed photograph in my pants pocket. It showed the young woman with a young man, both smiling sweetly, with the Bataan suspension bridge in the background. On the back was written, "Chinese Valentine's Day, never. To be separated." Goosebumps covered my body. I quickly burned the photo, silently reciting prayers for protection. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the couple standing on the water and that eerie cloth doll. When morning came, I decided to research whether any tragedies had occurred at Bataan. I opened my computer and searched for Bataan drowning couple. I quickly found relevant news. 3 years ago in July, a young couple had drowned at Bataan. The woman, named Lin Yuqing, was 22 years old and a recent college graduate. The man, Zhang Jiming, was 24 and worked as an engineer. More shocking was that the news mentioned Lin Yuqing had been 3 months pregnant. They had drowned on a rainy night while visiting Bataan. Their bodies were found 2 days after the incident, and according to witnesses, someone had seen them arguing near the suspension bridge that night. My hand involuntarily trembled. The woman from last night was Lin Yuqing. I continued reading related reports and found a follow-up story. Lin Yuqing's family had discovered in her diary that she and her boyfriend had planned to have a picnic at Bataan on Chinese Valentine's Day to celebrate their upcoming baby. They had even prepared a small cloth doll as the baby's first gift after birth. The news included a photo of Lin Yuqing. It was indeed the woman in the white dress from last night. My heart nearly stopped. Yesterday was the 15th day of the 7th lunar month, exactly 3 years after they had drowned. The next day, I went to a nearby temple to pray and told the temple keeper about my experience. The old man sighed after listening. "You encountered restless spirits. That girl died at Bataan 3 years ago because of a broken heart. Her soul cannot leave." I asked, "What should I do?" He gave me a protective charm, instructing me to burn it at Bataan and recite prayers by the river to help her cross over. I followed his instructions, returning to the Bataan bridge, lighting the charm and reciting the prayers. In the night breeze, I thought I heard the woman's voice whisper, "Thank you." But the temple keeper's explanation didn't match the news I had found. The news reported an accidental drowning, not a death from heartbreak. And what I had witnessed last night seemed more like a reunion in the water, not a lingering soul trapped by sorrow. I decided to investigate further. I tracked down the police officer who had handled the drowning case, an older officer named Lee, who had since retired but remembered the case clearly because of its many inconsistencies. The evidence suggested this wasn't a simple accident, Officer Lee told me. We found signs of a struggle at the scene, and the girl's autopsy showed bruises on her abdomen, suggesting she might have been pushed into the water. Then why did the news report it as an accidental drowning? I asked. Because we couldn't find concrete evidence of homicide, Officer Lee sighed. And the girl's family didn't want to make a big deal of it. They accepted the accident explanation, but I always suspected that the boy, upon learning of his girlfriend's pregnancy, might have argued with her and, in a moment of anger. But last night I saw them together looking very much in love, I couldn't help saying. Officer Lee looked at me, his eyes showing a hint of sympathy. Death sometimes resolves the grudges of the living. Perhaps they found a way to reconcile in another world. I also visited Lin Yuking's family. Initially they were reluctant to see me, but when I mentioned seeing Yu Qing at Bataan with the cloth doll, they finally agreed. Yu Qing's mother was a haggard, middle-aged woman, her eyes filled with endless sorrow. Yu Qing and Jiming were planning to get married, she told me. They were engaged and had prepared many things for the baby. That cloth doll was sewn by Yu Qing herself. She said she would give it to the baby after birth. Then why? I carefully asked. We don't know why such a thing happened, Yu Qing's mother choked. The police said it might have been an accident, but I've always believed something we don't know about must have happened. Yu Qing's last message to me said she was going to Bataan with Jiming to discuss something important. She took out a small box from a drawer containing a photograph, the same one I had found in my pocket. This was taken on their engagement day at Bataan, she said. They loved each other very much. I don't believe Jiming would hurt Yu Qing. After leaving Yu Qing's home, I decided to go to Bataan once more, this time during daylight. I wanted to see the place in sunlight, hoping to find some clues. Bataan was beautiful in daylight, with clear water under the suspension bridge and a few old men fishing along the shore. I went to where Yu Qing had found the cloth doll the night before and crouched down to examine the area carefully. Among the rocks I found a red string, the same one from the doll last night. I carefully picked it up and discovered a small metal object tied to one end. A ring. The ring had "never to be separated" engraved on it. I gave it to Yu Qing's mother. When she saw the ring, she broke down in tears, telling me it was the engagement ring Jiming had given to Yu Qing, which she had always worn on a necklace. Perhaps they truly are never separated, she cried, in another world. Afterward, I often dreamed of the young couple. In my dreams, they stood on the Bataan suspension bridge, holding a small baby, their faces radiating happiness. Each time I woke from these dreams, I felt a strange comfort, as if they were telling me they had reunited in another realm. My career as a taxi driver continued, but after that experience, I paid more attention to my passengers. Whenever someone got into my car, I would glance at the rearview mirror to check if they had a reflection, if they were breathing normally. Sometimes, on particularly quiet nights, when passing certain locations, like old apartments, abandoned factories, or small bridges at the edge of the city, I would feel a strange presence as if something was calling to me. But I had learned to respect those inexplicable things, no longer avoiding them out of fear. 1 year later, on the 15th day of Ghost Month, I went to Bataan again to place flowers. This time I brought 3 bouquets, one for Yu Qing, one for Jiming, and one for their unborn child. As I placed the flowers, a gentle breeze passed by, and I heard a child's laughter, clear and joyful. I looked up at the suspension bridge and for a fleeting moment saw three figures. A man and a woman holding a small child's hand, slowly walking across the bridge before disappearing into the night. I smiled and nodded, knowing they had finally reunited. Since then, my supernatural sight seems to have become more sensitive. I started seeing more things, but I no longer feel afraid. Instead, I began to understand that there are many things in this world that cannot be explained by science, that some souls remain in the human world because of unfulfilled wishes, and that some people, like me, have a responsibility to help them fulfill these wishes. My taxi became a fixture in Taipei's night, specifically carrying passengers who needed special help. Sometimes they were lost elderly people, sometimes young people who had lost their way, and sometimes souls who no longer belonged to this world but still had unfinished business. I no longer fear midnight passengers, because I know that everyone, whether living or dead, has their own story, needs to be listened to, understood, and helped.